Chandragupta Maurya, who reigned from approximately 320 BCE to 298 BCE, was the founder of the Maurya Empire, which was centered in Magadha, modern-day Bihar. His ascent to power occurred during a time of turmoil and regional conflict that followed Alexander the Great's campaign in India and his death in 323 BCE. While the exact timeline and sequence of events remain debated among historians, it is known that Chandragupta led a revolt against the unpopular Nanda dynasty in the Ganges Valley, defeating them and establishing his own rule. He also raised an army to confront the Greeks, defeating them and securing control over the eastern Indus Valley. His conquest of Magadha is generally dated to around 322 to 319 BCE, followed by the expansion into Punjab around 317 to 312 BCE. Buddhist and Jain traditions suggest that Chandragupta was guided by his mentor, Chanakya, who later became his minister. Through a strategic marriage alliance with Seleucus Nicator in 305 BCE, Chandragupta further extended his empire into parts of the western Indus Valley and eastern Afghanistan. There are no confirmed historical records regarding Chandragupta's origins or early life. Only legends exist to fill in these gaps. Much of the account of his reign is inferred from fragments in Greek and Roman sources, as well as a few Indian religious texts, all of which were written centuries after his death. Chandragupta's rule, which laid the foundation for the Maurya Empire that reached its height under his grandson Ashoka the Great, marked the beginning of an era of economic growth, reforms, and infrastructure development. During this time, Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivika rose to prominence over the non-Magadhian Vedic and Brahmanistic traditions, culminating under Ashoka in the spread of Buddhism and the blending of Brahmanic and non-Brahmanic traditions, which ultimately evolved into Hinduism. Chandragupta's conflicts with the Greeks and the Nanda king are briefly mentioned in a few passages from Greek-Roman sources dating from the 1st century BCE to the 2nd century CE, while other Greek texts provide impressions of India during his time. He is also referenced in Brahmanical, Buddhist, and Jain religious writings. However, Greek and Roman texts do not mention Chandragupta by name, with the exception of a 2nd century work by the Roman historian Justin. These sources primarily describe India or refer to the last Nanda emperor who seized the throne from his predecessor. Justin claims that Chandragupta came from humble beginnings and includes stories of miraculous events surrounding his life. Plutarch mentions that as a young man, Chandragupta saw Alexander the Great. While he is described as a notable king, his power and influence were considered less significant compared to Porus in northwestern India or Agramis, Dhanananda, in eastern India. The Brahmanical Puranic texts do not provide details about Chandragupta's ancestry, but focus instead on the lineage of the last Nanda king and the restoration of just rule by Kautilya. These texts depict the Nanda king as cruel, violating Dharma and Shastras, and born from an illicit relationship followed by a coup. Buddhist texts like the Mahavamsa suggest that Chandragupta was of Kshatriya origin, and these accounts, written around 7 centuries after his dynasty's fall, state that both he and his grandson Ashoka, a supporter of Buddhism, were Mauryas, a branch of the Shakya noble family to which Gautama Buddha belonged. None of the ancient texts specify Chandragupta's birth year. Plutarch asserts that he witnessed Alexander the Great during the latter's invasion of India between 326 and 325 BCE. If this account is accurate, historian Ray Chowdhury suggested in 1923 that Chandragupta may have been born after 350 BCE. A passage in Justin's history is also interpreted by some as referring to a meeting between Chandragupta and Alexander. Other Greco-Roman sources mention that after Alexander's death in 323 BCE, during a time of unrest and local conflicts, Chandragupta attacked the Greek-Indian governors and gained control of the eastern Indus Valley. Mukherjee dates the defeat of the Greeks to 323 BCE while Drive. Sushma Jansari places Chandragupta's arrival in Punjab around 317 BCE, in line with the timeline of Greek history. The texts do not provide specific years for the start or end of Chandragupta's reign, though some Hindu and Buddhist texts suggest he ruled for 24 years. Historians like Irfan Habib and Vivekanand Jha assign his reign to circa 322 BCE to 298 BCE, while Upinder Singh dates it from 324 or 321 BCE to 297 BCE. Christy Wiley estimates his reign was between 320 and 293 BCE. Jansari, acknowledging that circa 320 BCE is the most widely accepted date, claims that Chandragupta likely became ruler of India when Seleucus was laying the foundations of his own empire. Jansari suggests this period was between 311 BCE and 308 BCE, implying that Chandragupta had already come to power, potentially as the first Mauryan king. Around 305 or 303 BCE, Chandragupta and Seleucus Nicator formed a dynastic marriage alliance. Greek writer Seleucus, who lived in the 3rd century BCE, referred to Chandragupta as Sandrakoptos, a name later adopted by Greco-Roman writers such as Strabo, Arrian, and Justin in the 2nd century, who called him Sandrakotos. In Greek and Latin texts, he is sometimes known as Sandrakotos or Andrakotos. Sir William Jones, a British Orientalist and philologist, was the first to suggest in 1793 that the Chandragupta Maurya mentioned in Sanskrit literature was the same as the Sandrakotos in Greco-Roman historical sources. Greek sources indicate that Chandragupta continued to practice the Vedic Brahmin rituals, including animal sacrifices, and was fond of hunting. Legends about Chanakya often associate him with Chandragupta as his mentor and spiritual guide. One such tale, found in the Digambara tradition by Hemachandra, describes Chanakya as both a Jain layperson and a Brahmin. It is said that Jain monks prophesied at his birth that he would help someone become an emperor and serve as the power behind the throne. Various Buddhist and Hindu legends offer different versions of how Chandragupta met Chanakya. In most accounts, a young Chandragupta is said to have created a mock royal court with his shepherd friends near the Vindhya forest. Chanakya witnessed his leadership, bought him from a hunter, and adopted him. He then took Chandragupta to Taxila, where he taught him the Vedas, military strategy, law, and other important disciplines. According to the Buddhist version, Chanakya was appointed president of the Samga, which managed a charity foundation, but he was dismissed by Dhanananda due to his appearance and manners. In response, Chanakya cursed the king, fled Pataliputra, and later encountered Chandragupta. The Roman historian Justin, writing in the 2nd century CE, states that following Alexander the Great's death, the Greek governors in India were assassinated, which freed the Indian people from Greek rule. This revolt was led by Chandragupta. The exact nature of his early interactions with these governors is unclear. Historians Habib and Jha suggest that Justin describes Chandragupta as a rival to Alexander's successors in northwestern India, with Chandragupta launching attacks on the Greek-controlled territories. According to Justin, the Brahmins stirred up revolts against the unclean foreigners, prompting Paithon, one of Alexander's generals, to retreat to Arachosia, modern-day Kandahar, in 316 BCE. Justin also recounts that Chandragupta angered the Nanda king, who ordered his execution, but Chandragupta managed to escape. The Mudrarakshasa offers a version in which Chanakya, feeling insulted by the Nanda king, vowed to overthrow the Nanda dynasty. In the Jain tradition, it is said that it was the Nanda king who was insulted by Chanakya. Regardless of the version, Chanakya fled, found Chandragupta, and began a campaign against the Nanda king. Dr. Mukherjee describes Chandragupta's conquests as follows. After defeating the Greeks, Chandragupta and Chanakya led a revolt against the unpopular Nanda rulers. They first took control of the outer territories of the Nanda Empire, then advanced toward Pataliputra, the Nanda capital. Using guerrilla tactics and mercenaries from the territories they had conquered, they succeeded in capturing the city. With the defeat of Dhanananda, Chandragupta Maurya established the Maurya Empire. In 305 to 303 BCE, Seleucus Nicator, a Macedonian general who founded the Seleucid Empire, confronted Chandragupta Maurya, aiming to reclaim former satrapies. Instead, the two leaders formed a dynastic marriage alliance. Seleucus received 500 elephants, while Chandragupta gained control over territories along the eastern Indus. Although Greek sources do not mention an Indian princess, it is believed that either Chandragupta or his son Bindusara married a Seleucid princess, following Greek customs for dynastic alliances. The Mahavamsa mentions Chandragupta marrying a daughter of Seleucus, and the Pratisarga Parva of the Bhavishya Purana also describes this union with a Greek princess. Chandragupta's rule over present-day Gujarat is confirmed by Ashoka's Junagadh inscription, which mentions that his governor, Vaishya Pushyagupta, commissioned the Sudarshana lake. Rudradaman's inscription, about 400 years later, adds that Ashoka expanded the lake's infrastructure. This confirms Mauryan control over Gujarat and also suggests Chandragupta's rule over the Malwa region in central India. The extent of Chandragupta's conquests, especially in the Deccan, remains unclear. By the time of his grandson Ashoka's reign in 268 BCE, the empire stretched to Karnataka, so the southern conquests may be attributed to either Chandragupta or his son Bindusara. After unifying northern India, Chandragupta established a decentralized administration with provinces, local governments, and royal advisors. While it's commonly believed that Chandragupta followed the economic and statecraft policies in the Arthashastra, once attributed to his minister Chanakya, many scholars now argue that the text is not of Mauryan origin and contains principles inconsistent with his reign. Chandragupta's administration was highly structured. He had a council of ministers known as Amatya, with Chanakya serving as chief minister. The empire was divided into territories called Janapadas, which were fortified and financed by the state treasury. Strabo, writing 300 years after Chandragupta's death, describes how his administration included counselors for justice, tax assessors for trade goods, and officers who maintained law and order in the cities, where crime was low. Megasthenes describes Chandragupta's rule as having three parallel administrative bodies, one overseeing village affairs such as irrigation, land ownership, and law enforcement, another managing city-related matters like trade, foreign visitors, markets, and taxation, and a third focused on military affairs including training and supplies. Epigraphical evidence shows that Chandragupta initiated extensive irrigation projects to support food supplies for both civilians and the military, a practice continued by his successors. The Junagadh inscription of Rudradaman, 150 CE, notes that Chandragupta's reservoirs and irrigation systems were later expanded by Ashoka and repaired by Rudradaman. His empire also developed mines, manufacturing centers, and trade networks, alongside land routes facilitating transportation across the subcontinent. Kaushik Roy refers to the Mauryas as great road builders. Megasthenes credits Chandragupta for constructing a 1,000-mile highway linking his capital, Pataliputra, with Taxila. Other major roads connected Pataliputra to regions like Nepal, Kapilavastu, Dehradun, Mirzapur, Odisha, Andhra, and Karnataka. Chandragupta supported Vedic rituals and Brahmanical traditions, hosting grand festivals with elephants and horses. Despite this, Buddhism, Jainism, and Ajivika flourished during his reign and became more prominent than traditional Vedic practices.